This past Sunday, a young Catholic filmmaker named Cameron O'Hearn of Horselord Films released his first episode in a trilogy called Mass of the Ages. And he has a really successful YouTube channel too. But we just wanted to do some quick comments on that film, our initial reactions, and as we move through the trilogy, we'll elaborate on it a bit. But
yeah, I hope more and more people continue to view it. I knew it was in the making for a little over a year, just because they did some filming here at our parish.
Yeah. So initial reaction is, well, actually, before we even start, there's a little juicy surprise in the film. And that juicy surprise is sitting across from me.
That's right.
Dan Alspach, he sits 2 feet away from me, everybody. So, if you zoom in on the funeral part, Dan is...
The Requiem Mass, yeah. I'm emceeing the Latin Requiem Mass with our pastor, Father Tom. So I make a nice cameo into the film.
It's hilarious. Never thought I'd see Dan and Taylor Marshall in the same film, but things got weird.
They are.
Things happened. So initial reaction is... from my perspective, I know you share the sentiment, is that we needed this. Mm-hmm. The traditional Latin Mass community needed this. It needed to have this emotional, beautiful appeal.
An advertisement for
better press.
Yeah, better press. Because I'll tell you what, if we had something like this years ago, even pre-Benedict, Traditionis Custodes maybe never would have come out. Because it seems like in that document there's a lot of misunderstanding about who the kind of people are that attend the old rite.
Yeah, I think this documentary so far is doing a good job of blowing the lid off of the Latin Mass community and allowing, for the first time almost, the bishops to see this community for what it really is, instead of what they've thought it is, the straw man that you find in Traditionis Custodes. It's sort of crusty old people, on a little island in the diocese that, the bishop leaves alone and lets them do their plaything, until playtime is over.
And they're mad about it.
Yeah.
No, this is showing what truly is happening, and that is the new generation is, for the first time, not reacting against the church and a church that they probably felt at the time betrayed them. Mm-hmm. No, this new generation that is discovering the Latin Mass, the old rite, is doing it organically. Mm-hmm. They're rediscovering a tradition that was there, and they're not upset about it. They're not mad about it. They're just loving it.
Yeah, I feel like the bishops, the current generation of the bishops, their whole thing from their parents was everything, almost like the old saying, behind every white picket fence was like a miserable family or something. It's sort of the veneer of structure and stability and strength. But underneath that were all these things that no one talked about, and there were problems. That was sort of the mentality they grew up with, being raised under the great generations, 2 great generations, For us, it's the complete opposite. We were raised in a time that was complete instability, not even the veneer of stability. So young people are coming to the Latin Mass and they're finding something that for the first time is ordering their life, something that offers timelessness in an age where everything is changing all the time. It offers their children discipleship.
Well, I think, and it comes off in the film, is that authenticity is that word we often throw around. Mm-hmm. It's happening in every other facet of life, that this new generation is looking for something that's authentic. You look at the back of a chip bag, right? I want to see authentic ingredients.
Right.
Okay? Same thing when it comes to Catholicism. I'm Catholic. When I turn that bag over, I want to see authentic ingredients here, right? And
I want to see purgatory, merit,
indulgences. I want to see...
Yeah, 100% too. That's daily value.
But I mean, I think that's the appeal to the old rite is that it feels and it is authentic.
Yeah, and I think the film is doing a really good job of doing that, and making Traditionis Custodes and documents like it seem like it's talking past its audience rather than to it, and I think it's doing a good job of that.
Yeah, Traditionis is what we can say maybe unnecessary.
Yeah,
because if it's addressed to this kind of group, it's missing its mark.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what else does the film do good in your eyes?
Well, I thought, just to dive into it a little more specific, I thought the section on when it's describing the prayers at the foot of the altar. So in the old rite, the priest and the 2 servers, or any server, they have the recitation of Psalm 42 and then the Confiteor together. And I loved how it was described as this time of slowing down and readying oneself to enter into the Mass. When you think of the Novus Ordo or the new Mass, the Mass that most Catholics are familiar with, the prayers at the foot of the altar are no longer there. So when you walk into church, maybe you're 2 minutes right before it begins or whatever, you're going right into it. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and you're right into the rite.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, or you get that. Good morning, everybody. All are welcome kind of thing. Yeah. But here, the documentary is correct, that the prayers of the foot of the altar have their place in the Mass because it slowly allows us to get involved into the Mass itself, but to come slowly into the divine presence, to ascend with the priest into God's presence on the altar. So I thought it was a great way to explain it, to slow us down. I mean, in our world today, fast pace, everything's this, a text this, email right away. When you come to the Mass, the world slows and time slows, right? And time really goes away.
Well, and it's just a proper time for you to take in what you're about to do and the gravity of it. And I think that's the debilitating factor in the Novus Ordo, taking out this whole preparatory rite of
and see that's the thing. Some who support taking it out. They were saying, well, it doesn't really belong. It's not part of the Mass proper.
Of the Mass proper, right? Yeah.
But this is showing that, no, it is appropriate.
Right.
For how we approach the divine. We do it with gravity, we do it slowly, and we approach God in that way.
And we acknowledge what we are before we do it. And that's the other thing, too, is that people will see, like, oh, the old Latin Mass and the priests who like to do that, they're just like, they tend to be Pharisaic and hypocritical and stuff. But you look at what that priest is doing. He's saying, I'm not worthy to do what I'm about to do, and I know that, so like, give me grace that I may, and let the martyrs who are also here, like, give me grace that I may do what I'm about to do. So but I thought that was great too in the film.
The other thing I really liked about it, and we need more of this, is it addressed the misnomer that the Novus Ordo, the new Mass, the Mass of Paul VI, whatever you want to call it, is not just a translation of the old rite. Still, a lot of Catholics out there believe that when we say traditional Latin Mass, we mean, the Mass that's just in Latin. So right. you hear it in English, you hear it in Spanish, whatever your language is, vernacular is. And the Latin Mass is just, people who prefer Latin.
Right.
A lot of Catholics still believe that.
But see, and that's what plays into the straw man behind a Traditionis Custodes. That's what plays into that, is because then people see the Latin Mass community as sort of like these people who are like fixated upon the Latin language or something. And that's why it was a dumb thing for all of us to do, to call it the TLM in the first place, to call it the traditional
I think
Latin
so too.
Mass.
I think I think it is now the term for it, so you do
just
have to use
it. Yeah.
But to say it's the traditional Latin Mass misses the point, and it's a confusing way to describe it. We always prefer old use, ancient use, something like that.
Because immediately, if someone who doesn't know much about theology of the church or the Mass itself, if they hear traditional Latin Mass, they just think, traditional, so it has a lot of bells and smells, and Latin, it's in Latin, but it's the Mass. But really,
and so to getting to that point is that in the documentary they rightly point out that 83% of the old rite is unique to it. In other words, only 17% or so of the old rite orations show up in the new Mass. Okay.
That is, I want everyone to understand that. I mean, that is unbelievable. That is unbelievable. That when we're doing all the rites of the Novus Ordo, we are limping along on only 17% of the Latin tradition.
Yeah, and so when you look at, when you read Pope Francis's Motu Proprio, and he says that the Mass of Paul VI, the new Mass, is unique or the only expression of the Roman Rite, that's actually not true. The uniqueness is in the old Rite. 83% of it was unique to the Latin Rite. And so that's kind of the catechesis that this documentary is starting to do, that I'm glad it's doing, because that's the kind of catechesis we need, and we've needed for decades.
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed the part I was in. No, I did actually like that section because talking about the Requiem Mass, the Latin Mass, the gravity of it, and I have heard from so many people, even in our own parish, people who've actually come back to the faith. We've had atheists who've come back into the church, or just to the church for the first time, because they attended a funeral. a Latin Mass funeral or a Requiem Mass.
To add to that, there was a person our brother Tim, one of his brothers-in-law was at a Catholic funeral, and these are evangelicals. They don't know anything about the Catholic thing. So they were at a funeral, and I think it was actually their grandpa. They're at their grandpa's funeral, who is Catholic. And after they walked away, now this is the type of people that you would never hear a single thing that is like positive about the Catholic Church. But even he said, he looked at me and he said, you know what, those Catholics, they know how to do a funeral though.
Yep, they know how to bury their dead.
Yeah.
And so I thought that came across really well in the documentary.
Yeah.
Just the gravity of what we're doing and the beauty of taking care of our brothers and sisters who have died.
And I think that actually worked really well, just from a production standpoint, story writing standpoint, with the Catholic influencer and blogger who lost her husband, because the whole thing just showed this is what it looks like. Like, this is what it looks like when a family has suffered unbelievable tragic loss. And they find meaning in it in the traditional rites of the church. That the traditional rites of the church came as a safety blanket to hold them through that whole experience.
Yeah,
and that was great.
And it's not just anecdotal. You've had some bloggers who are writing against this documentary and saying, they use nostalgia and anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, it's all those old.
But here's the thing: that family and their tragedy, I hear it all the time. And even the tragedy of being an atheist and coming back to the church because of the Latin Mass, because of going to a Requiem Mass, or because of going to a Catholic funeral, that's all part of this. We hear it all the time. It's not just this one person. This is just encapsulating that whole narrative.
And it speaks to our whole experience, because spending 7 or so more years in Anglicanism, the liturgical project becomes so exhausting. Because Anglican, if anyone has gone through liturgical revision after liturgical revision after liturgical revision, it is literally the Anglicans since the 16th century. Yeah. It has been a constant battle back and forth between all these vying, parties.
Low
in the
church, high church, broad church.
Yeah, and I mean, it's crazy. Cranmerians, it's just Oxford movement. All these different movements in the Anglican Church. They're just doing whatever they want with their pet fancies with the liturgy, and it becomes so exhausting. You feel so unstable, and then finally, you walked into a Latin Mass.
That's
and
what I'm
you
saying.
Like,
her family's story of finding stability and rest. That's my story of when I walked into the Latin Mass here. I took a deep sighing breath and said, this is what
I can finally just rest.
I can rest. I don't have to worry about anything in the church. This is what I was looking for. That's what people experience.
Yeah, because it's pristine and it's perfect.
That's what it is. One of the things we don't know where the documentary is going now in 2 and 3, but one of the things I would point out as a hopeful and maybe a negative to the first part of this is that I'm hoping it continues to be evangelistic. I'm hoping it's not just an echo chamber for other traditional Catholics to love this documentary. Yeah, I really do hope it is drawing in and seeks to draw in everyday Catholics around the world who only know the Novus Ordo, who only know the new Mass, that they would rediscover their own faith through this documentary. I mean, that's the hope. I was a little concerned that the first episode may have been a little too much of an echo chamber, just speaking to itself.
Yeah, which actually brings me to my critique, first real critique of it, is that, okay, so you went through all this trouble, to make this documentary, to put a new face on the community, to show the community for what it really is rather than the straw man, but I have to ask, why is Taylor Marshall in this then? As a speaker. I mean, look, I don't wish any harm to the man or anything. It's just that when you're talking about trying to bring more people into this and to show people the more positive side of the traditional Latin Mass community, it could be argued that Taylor Marshall is one of those top 5 personalities in the United States that has driven so much division.
Well, at the very least, we all know he's a controversialist. Yeah, he hones in on the controversies in the church and speaks about them. Fine, that's needed in the church, whatever. But when I was watching the documentary and then he showed up, I thought it was a bit odd. I was like, wait, why is he in this?
Because also who is missing from it are personalities that you think would be like front and center. Like, why wouldn't you have Archbishop Cordileone? There's a lot of people in the hierarchy. Cardinal Burke. He was sort of in it, but not a lot.
And maybe they'll get to it, but yeah, based on the first episode.
That's what I'm hoping is that they'll have more speakers in the hierarchy that have credentials, you know, to speak to this too, because it's not just a bunch of lay people on the ground. You have so many people in the church in the hierarchy, Athanasius Snyder, you know, even like the Raymond Arroyos of the world, Scott Hahn. I mean, there's a lot of people that are authoritative figures, Patrick Madrid. Yeah. The other thing is that I'm worried about the direction of it for episodes 2 and 3, because I hope that the conclusion of this whole journey is not going to be, we need the Mass in Latin again only. You know, that the Latin Mass is so pristine and perfect it can never be properly translated. Because it's been like kind of an elephant in the room in all of these conversations if you're just like a normal traditional Catholic. When you hear like a traddy and like a crazy liberal on the other side like going at each other, and you're in the middle and you're like, well, you want it in English. You want everything preserved. Why didn't you just translate it into English? And I think a lot of people maybe would resonate with that. So I don't want them to go to that direction where they go the traddy direction and say it can never be translated properly.
Yeah, and it's not like that. I agree. I mean, it's not like that we're showing ourselves to be kind of moderate in the middle. It's more of, we have seen good English liturgy because we were Anglicans.
That's right.
And you go to high Anglican churches, the continuing Anglican churches, any high Anglican church, you'll find some of the great liturgies ever in the English language.
Yeah.
And a lot of our English language is set up to be a great liturgical language.
Well, yeah. I mean, English as a language has proven itself throughout the centuries. Now, you may say, through Protestantism, but whatever you want to say. But you're telling me the King James Version of the Bible and the Book of Common Prayer didn't do anything great for the English language? Of course it did. You know, and it has proven its worth. Even before the Reformation, it proved its worth as a liturgical language. You get words like atonement. You know, we've talked about this before. Where like atonement is a theological word that exists in no other language except English. That was an English word, and yet we use it all the time as if it's like always been here. You know, but even words like sanctification, propitiation, purgatory. I mean, we have properly translated these terms from Latin into English, and so English has proven its worth as both a theological and a liturgical language, especially in its, we could say, high Elizabethan form. You know, it's liturgical English.
We won't say Cranmerian form.
But it has shown itself that way, and that's actually where you get even the Douay Rheims Bible. I mean, even that English is stunningly beautiful. The English that's just in your Latin Mass Missal, like every time that you go to church and you open it up, like we've talked about that before, on the right side of the page is the translation. It's a beautiful translation.
Well, that's the other thing I think you're getting at here, is the other elephant in this room, always when we're talking to other Catholics who appreciate the Latin Mass, the Ordinariat.
Yes.
What do you do with the Ordinariat?
And what is the Ordinariat? I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who have no idea what that is.
So the Ordinariat is the liturgy that is used by people who were formerly Anglicans and came into the Catholic Church, again, under Pope Benedict, thankfully. And they have their own liturgy that preserves the Roman Rite, adds in some Cranmerian prayers.
What was good about Cranmer?
What was good about Cranmer. Takes what's good about the Reformer Cranmer and puts it into the liturgy in an organic kind of way. Oh yeah, that does belong there.
But what's interesting about that is that what's great about it is that high Anglicans, after the Oxford movement, had already started to, I don't want to say abandon, but in their own way of sort of Anglican liturgical abuse, they would start to just translate wholesale Latin texts of the Mass, of the Rituale Romanum, of the daily office into beautiful English, and they were just using that wholesale. Just like they're literally doing the Latin Mass in English, like in a lot of these parishes. And it was like, okay, you know, bishops say, yeah, that's okay, you can do it. So what's funny is that when they said, hey, you can come into the Catholic Church now as Anglicans of this like Anglican use in a way, they brought with them Roman Catholic translations of the Mass and all the rituals. So in some sense, you're like, it's right there.
Yeah, so I think what we're saying is that we're interested to see if the Ordinariat is addressed in this documentary. If they are, how do the makers of this documentary understand the Ordinariat and view the Mass of the Ordinariat? Yeah, I think that's something interesting that I would like to see come up in this. Because you're going to get a lot of Catholics say, well, just take that old Mass and translate it then. Yeah. And the answer is, well, we have. It's called the Ordinariat.
Or the 1965 Missal. But yeah, I think overall, though, this is a great project. I fully support it. I hope everybody who listens to us also goes and watches this and tell others to watch it too, because it's very, very important. It'll show you what we still have and what we've lost, and maybe it'll give us a gut check as Catholics. But I hope that it stays very invitational and evangelistic. I just want that to be the tone. I don't want it to go down the tratty rabbit hole.
Thank you to the makers. Absolutely. Mass of the Ages.
For sure.